Hello friends, welcome back. This is part 4, a very leading edge topic on bilocation and the understanding that your consciousness can live in many different bodies. There is also a part 1, which is a gift. This is about your spiritual gifts and talents, and part 1 would be communicating with nature. Part 2 was premonitions and precognition. Part 3 was understanding telepathy. And this is part 4 of the series. And today it's on bilocation and consciousness transfer. Now, all of my videos are very dense with information. All the way from the beginning to the end, it's dense with information. So you will probably have to listen to these videos more than once to get a thorough understanding of the topic. And all of these videos are interconnected with other videos such as lucid dreaming, sacred fire, your lineage, all of my personal experiences and encounters with angels and extraterrestrials. And so the whole thing is a library of teachings that I have from wisdom and experience that I have gained from my own personal encounters and experiences. And so I'm going to talk today about consciousness transfer and bilocation from my own personal experiences. And we're going to start, we'll start with where you can begin, where the beginning of that is, and we'll work through some examples that I have had, and we'll go through sort of the levels of conscious transfer, all the way to picking where you want to go at when you die so that you know where you're going. So to begin with this, we're going to sort of start at the basic level. And the basic level, everything starts in your dream plane. Everything starts with lucid dreaming. And so, when you begin to have bilocation consciousness transfer experiences, where you are in two places at once, and you are aware of being in two places at once, that will normally start out in the beginning as a situation where you're in the dream plane and you suddenly see yourself, your astral body self, doing something. But you aren't totally in that body, you're also the watcher of that body. Now it should be common enough that everybody should have this experience, because our astral body is the body that is so connected to us. Many of us go into that astral body after we die. So it is easy, very easy for you to be in bilocation. You're aware of your sleeping self or your meditating self, and you're aware of your astral self simultaneously. So you will experience this probably in dreams first before meditation, but in dreams you will experience it as if you're standing on the sidelines watching yourself do something, or you're standing behind yourself watching yourself do something. But in this instance, you the human ego is watching your astral self. And so you are aware of yourself as the watcher and aware of yourself doing the event, whatever it is in the astral world, because that you that is in the astral world is you. And how much anchored you are in there or in your physical ego self, this is the beginning stages, because in the beginning you may be almost completely anchored in your physical ego, and you'll be watching yourself do something in the astral, and you'll be slightly integrated into it. In other words, you understand what she's doing, you're feeling the feelings about it, you understand what's happening. So you may be 60% or 70% in your human ego, and you may be 30% or 40% in your astral self. And this is a common bilocation, the beginning of bilocation, being aware of your sleeping self and being aware of your astral self. Now, sometimes people will awake in the astral plane and they will be aware that they are awake in the astral plane. That is being totally anchored in your astral body. So in that bilocation instance, when you realize that and you go, oh, I'm awake, or maybe you're already lucid and you know what you're doing in the astral plane, you're mostly anchored in the astral body and you have an awareness of your other body, which is either sleeping or meditating, but you're maybe 80% in the astral body. So that is another way that the bilocations interact. A witness self in the beginning, and then a lucid anchored self in the astral plane with an awareness of the sleeping self or the meditating self. So let's understand a little bit about consciousness transfer and this bilocation idea. And I may do another video specifically on this idea, but I'm going to cover it today. This is part of the 4-part series. Imagine your consciousness, your human ego consciousness, like an orange, or even maybe more like a lemon. And when you have this lemon-sized human ego consciousness, the one that's awake during the day, go and become awake in the astral worlds, it's moving into a level of consciousness that might be the size of an orange. And so this lemon consciousness can go into the orange consciousness and begin to expand to the point where the consciousness that was the lemon is completely enlarged enough to now be the size of the orange in the astral world. And that's when you become lucid and you're astral traveling, or you're just having lucid dreamings. Your small human animal consciousness has expanded to the size of the astral body consciousness, which is the orange size. So this is how consciousness is you move into the levels, and I've talked a lot about the levels. It's like a computer game. There are many densities. Now, oftentimes I'll use dimensions because it's a typical word we all know, but really it's not the scientific dimension explanation. It's a density. It's a density or a frequency of consciousness. And some of these densities can still have physical form similar to us, but they have more expanded consciousness, so their talents and abilities are a little greater than us. So in the 4th density and 5th density, now you're going, when you want to travel into those levels of consciousness, you're going to have to go to, let's say 4th density is very close to the size of the orange. So it's a little bit bigger, but it is, so going into 4th density, you would take your orange consciousness, that's your astral body consciousness, and expand it a little bit more so that it is now able to hold 4th density. Because we are so connected to 4th density, because we are constantly influenced by extraterrestrials and their telepathic communications, see my video 3 in this series about telepathy and how our thoughts are our own and how we're so influenced by 4th density and the astral worlds. So now when you go to 5th density, that may be the size of a grapefruit. So now to go into 5th density, you're going to have to expand your orange to the size of a grapefruit to be able to hold 5th density consciousness. And so your divine blueprint and remember, consciousness is attached to your blueprint. Your blueprint is multidimensional. Your divine blueprint will feed you experiences of expanded consciousness. If you will awaken to this practice and begin to educate and train yourself, this is leading edge information, and probably it'll be several generations from now that the vast majority of those people coming in on the earth will be able to snap right into this information. Really, what it takes when these beings come in behind these generations, it just takes videos like this. This is why I'm creating this library, for them to have this information. They see it on a YouTube, or they see it written somewhere, and it immediately triggers their understanding. Oh yes, I'm multidimensional. I have many levels of consciousness. And that's what these videos are designed to do, to stimulate your knowing. You know this. How habituated you are with your old programmings, and we all are, because this is where we are in the evolution of humanity. See my 7 levels of spiritual evolution. Most of humanity is an aspirant level and below. We got a long ways to go, friends. So disciple level will be able to listen to this information, and if they are not too bogged down with the training of the world, they can get triggered. And they can say, oh yes, this sounds right to me. I remember this. I do have the ability to move up and down in consciousness, to communicate with higher level, to communicate with denser levels. It's a natural ability. So your divine blueprint will send you these different experiences in the dream plane and in meditation to expand your consciousness. This is why meditation is so important, and the sacred fire is important, and lucid dreaming exercises, and disciplining your lucid dreaming with the tips that I gave you in the videos on tips. Going to sleep in the proper way, not waking up with alarm clocks. All these things I'm giving you is to help you become, is to help you stimulate your consciousness to start expanding. Because you cannot go where you haven't been after death. And friends, when people tell you that you can take your little lemon consciousness from the human ego and ascend after this life into some 8th density angelic ascended frequency, they're misleading you. That can't happen. Your consciousness would just completely, your consciousness would simply go unconscious in those higher frequencies, because we are expanding. You have to hold the density and be solid in the density, and then spirit, your consciousness, your divine blueprint brings you the next density. And when I have done this, when I've gone from one density to the next density, like from 4th to 5th to 6th, like that, the first times you're doing it, you will only hold it for a second, because it is so expanded, you have no reference points to it. It's not like your earth body. This is why you can't be attached to the earth body and attached to the astral body, or you stay there. If you can let yourself go, then when you move into these higher frequencies, the expansion you feel is not going to be anything related to earth. So you have to practice going into the grapefruit, for instance, and the orange has to, you go into that grapefruit size as an orange, and the first thing you do is you just kind of go, oh, and you lose consciousness, and you go back into your body because you couldn't hold it. But you keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going, and over time, you're able to expand, and now you're able to hold that 5th density. And 5th density beings are very different than the humans here on Earth. So you do this, you progress through this right now, and pretty much takes our whole life, because we haven't been trained, and I'm trying to present these videos as an educational tool so that when people come in and they are triggered by this, they're able to work quickly by doing their own exercises. Just like you're in school, friends, you exercise your consciousness. You do your lucid dreaming, you do your exercises, you do your meditation, you clean up your environment, you clean up your lineage, you protect yourself so that you don't have outside influences. It's a huge combination. We could make a university out of this teaching if anybody wants to volunteer to do that. So I would love to expand this information, but I need a benefactor or some kind of a, system that does those kind of things like universities where they donate large money to creating teachings. So maybe in the next few years we can get that. So now to go into 6th density, that's even more like the size of a watermelon, because 6th density is the ability to hold simultaneously two bodies at the same time. I've talked about this in other videos. We're able in these lower densities to be aware of 2 bodies, but most of the time one of them is in more of a still state, not up and moving around and having a life. The other one is active, and one is either sitting calmly or resting calmly. And that is kind of the typical bilocation consciousness transfer that goes on in 3rd, 4th, and 5th densities. When you get into 6th density, you are now able to hold 2 bodies simultaneously in full active mode. In other words, they are moving along and they are going along, and you're holding that consciousness. Now we're talking a watermelon-sized consciousness. This consciousness can have a body that's maybe working in 5th density and a body working in 6th density, or a body that's in 6th density starting to work in 7th. But they can hold these 2 frequencies, these 2 divine blueprints. The blueprint, this gets complicated, and I'm not going to go into 6th density too much in this video, but at that level, your divine blueprint has a way of unifying these 2 bodies through the consciousness, and it's a watermelon-sized consciousness. So I've been in 6th density and 7th density with my consciousness. So let me tell you some experiences, what more you can expect yourself now that I've explained a little of this background. So you have to stick with me through this video. It's dense. So now that you're having this witness self, see yourself doing things in the astral, and now you're having these experiences where you're totally lucid in the astral, and you know what you're doing in the astral plane, and you're aware of yourself meditating or sleeping. So then the next experiences you will have will be usually 4th and 5th density or extraterrestrial events. And there are a lot of extraterrestrials out there right now that are inside of your soul. Remember, the soul is a container of consciousness, and it's created millions of avatars. Inside your soul, you have extraterrestrials. And you could say your soul, everything in your soul is your family, but you have your own divine blueprint. So inside your soul container, you have beings from other planets. We're not just earthbound. Your soul is universal. So you will be getting to be contacted by your extraterrestrials within your soul complex. And this is where a lot of you will be going that are at disciple level now, and you're going to be making transition. You will be transitioning if you want to. It is your choice, because I did say your consciousness lives in many bodies. It's your choice. And you will be offered choices of where you want to go next. And a lot of those choices will be on how you can expand from, the lemon to the orange to the grapefruit and up. So let's say you're now doing 4th and 5th density expansion. So now you're holding that grapefruit size expansion. You're going to be going, now let me back up on that. 4th density expansion, those will be extraterrestrials that are working with this planet, that are working with our government and the secret space program. Those density beings are more like the Greys and some, some other kinds of, reptilians, all that stuff that you hear about. That's that 4th density, and your consciousness we're pretty much already in that size. That's the orange size. We're already pretty much there. So when you start having experiences in 4th density on extraterrestrial ships, you have to be careful, because this transitional part, the struggle we have is astral worlds, astral purgatory worlds, and fourth density, which I spoke about in the previous video 3. These two are where you can get sort of sidetracked, sort of diverted. They can sort of capture you and take you off, or you can get seduced. You know, you get on these ships in fourth density, and they're very much like what you see in Star Trek and all the sci-fi, and you get seduced into being on these ships. But these are not the highest places you can go, and then you wind up being in a fourth density struggle situation of still light and dark, and all the battles you see and all the sci-fi movies you see, that's fourth density. So some will go there because they are seduced into being on spaceships, but they're not educating themselves as to what kind of beings are on these spaceships. And even some of them, I've been on a number of these ships. Some of them will be fairly benign. They're not all aggressively negative. There are some benign in fourth density. They're here trying to help humanity. They want you to come and be on their ships as sort of part of their crew and, you know, sort of rescue humanity in the future. There's going to be quite a number of major cataclysmic events, and they're going to want to rescue some of their own soul complex out of these problems that are coming in the future. And so you might be asked to be on the crew after death in a body that's very similar to your body now, because you're not changing too much frequency. You can still hold this body, but it'll be a little different. You'll be telepathic and things like that. But, you know, you'll be helping with maybe rescue operations. That's a lot of fourth density. The good ETs in fourth density are into trying to rescue humanity, trying to save, you know, the planet from blowing itself up. So there's good things in fourth density. It's just a tricky area. When you get into fifth density, those ETs, they have pretty much completely eliminated the conflict that's going on. They still are involved in a universe that has conflict, and not until you get to sixth density do you completely shed that little bit of corrupted blueprint that's down here in these lower frequencies. So in fifth, they are exposed to conflict, or they're exposed to struggles, but they have the grapefruit consciousness, which allows them not to engage in it, and they find resolution in a higher way to resolve the issues. They stay away from those areas of space that are trouble. I mean, they just have a way of dealing with it. And when you go there, you're going to start in fifth density, you're going to start getting what I call a smart body, and I've mentioned this in other videos. You're extremely intelligent. I mean, you just know everything that you need to know. I mean, when I'm in that body, at first when I was working with my fifth density body, which also she's been moving into sixth density. When I first started doing that, I would be the witness, and I would watch her, and she was, because I talked about in another video that I'm a pattern keeper in the Syrian ships. She knew all about patterns and the divine blueprint, and she knew how to access various programs and how to work it all. And I would witness it for a while, and then I began to integrate with her, because we're talking more of a grapefruit size. And I began to understand and have the knowing of what was going on in the ships, the Syrian ships, and things like that, and have this anchoring of this fifth density consciousness. Now, if you are working through your levels and you get into fifth density, you're going to be contacted by extraterrestrials that are extremely advanced. Well, I say, you know, we're not talking six, because that's an entirely different focus, but I'm talking about extraterrestrials that are physical, that were either born or manifested on planetary bodies in the universe. Because remember in my video on the Syrians, they are space beings. They aren't planetary beings that are in space. There's a difference between space beings and planetary beings. In fifth, They are planetary beings still, but they're highly, highly evolved. And a lot of disciple level humans will be going there. That is the more refined extraterrestrial civilizations, and they are wonderful places to go. And you can be offered these choices, and you can be offered to leave this planet and go to other home worlds that are in your you know, whatever extraterrestrial group you're connected to. You'll go visit those home worlds. You'll have a whole different life, because in fifth density, your form is not human. It will be different. For instance, it could be blue. The skin could be blue, and you could be bald, but you still have, you know, the normal appendages look, you know, 2 hands and 2 feet and eyes. But you could have your skin could be a slightly blue tinge. You could have no hair. Your eyes could be different. Your internal organs are different. So you're not looking exactly like your human self. And you have to be able to accept this. When you start moving into these frequencies, you'll start transferring your consciousness into bodies that are not like you. And this is why sometimes you fall out of it again, because it's so strange you can't hold it. But once you begin to hold it, you'll be comfortable moving around and walking in bodies that don't look like you. And that is, now you know your consciousness is really growing, and you're freeing yourself from the astral planes and from Earth, because you are able to hold a consciousness that doesn't even look like you. And so then from there you go into sixth density. I'm going to try to not make this video too long. I could talk an hour. So I'm going to cut it down by just talking a little bit about that experience. I had an experience a number of years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where when I was already in the fifth density, I was approached by Mataji, and just for historical purposes, she's the sister of Babaji, the original Babaji, who immortalized at 17, and his sister did at 17, or somewhere around that age is the history of it. We don't have a, you know, we just have Indian history about it. But after immortalizing, they then ascended, and they are sixth density beings. And so when I was moving into sixth density, in one experience, Mataji came and she told me she was going to take me to a sixth density kingdom. And we immediately went into this space, and now we're talking expanded consciousness. Now, I wasn't totally in the watermelon spot yet, and that's what I'm talking, well, maybe that's a little too big from the grapefruit. Whatever's between a grapefruit and a watermelon, because watermelon is probably higher up. So whatever's the next step in a fruit. So I was there at sort of a portal to step into this sixth density when she handed me a robe, a beautiful white robe. She said, put this robe on. So I put the robe over my head and let it drape over me. And what happened was this robe transformed my body and became my body. And I was this being that the robe was just a way of donning on a new body. And I became a body of, it wasn't pure light, it had form, but it was of a very brilliant light, brilliant glowing light, but it had form. And the forms, when we went into this kingdom, all the beings were of this same luminescent light, but they had form. But the form was only there to distinguish between self and not self in the most slightest way, because everything there is so unified and in harmony with each other that there really is no separation, but there is. And it's just enough to give you a sense of self and not self, so that there can be creative interactions and creative harmony that goes on between these people, these beings in this sixth density kingdom. So I'm going to stop there because I could go on for a long time. So now I just suggest that you have any questions, please leave your questions below, and any comments, leave your comments below. Please share these videos if you think someone could benefit from them. And remember, there are 4 of these videos in a playlist, so you can go back and look at all of these. These are your spiritual gifts and talents that you're developing. So thank you very much, friends, for watching, and I will see you again soon.